From the very beginning, she believed she had control. She thought that distance would make you the one to break first, that ignoring you would trigger something in you, making you fight harder for her attention. But now, something feels different. At first, she carried on as if nothing had happened. She kept her routine, filled her time with people and distractions, and convinced herself that life was moving forward exactly as it should. She even felt a sense of satisfaction knowing she had pulled away without a second thought. But as the days passed, something started to shift. The silence wasn't just a momentary pause in communication. It was a presence, an undeniable, heavy reminder that something was missing. No matter how much she tried to ignore it, that feeling only grew stronger. She still kept her guard up. She still acted as if nothing had changed. But when she was alone, when there was no one left to distract her, her mind went exactly where she didn't want it to, back to you. She checked her phone a little more often than usual, hoping to see your name. She felt the urge to post something subtle, something just obvious enough to see if you would react. She scanned old conversations, rereading the words she once dismissed as unimportant. She told herself it was just curiosity, that it didn't mean anything, that it was just a habit. But the truth was, it wasn't a habit. It was a realization that the absence she thought she wanted didn't feel like freedom. She had assumed that by ignoring you, she could push you into chasing her. She thought the distance would create a pull effect, where you'd want her even more. But instead, you did the one thing she never expected. You didn't chase. You didn't react. You didn't reach out. And that's what changed everything. Now, her thoughts weren't just about what happened. They were about what wasn't happening. Because you weren't behaving like the men before you. You weren't following the script she had played out in her mind. And that uncertainty, that's what started to get under her skin. Now, every moment of silence wasn't just silence. It was a void. And the more that void grew, the more she felt the weight of her own choices. What she once saw as control now felt like regret. The weight of the unknown, when silence becomes her biggest enemy. The silence was supposed to work in her favor. She expected you to react, to feel uneasy, to seek her out in an attempt to regain her attention. That's how it always played out before. Whenever she withdrew, men rushed in, desperate to fix what they thought was broken. But this time, nothing happened, and that's where the real discomfort begins to set in. At first, she brushes it off, telling herself that you're probably just being stubborn, playing your own game. She assumes that at any moment you'll break, that you'll reach out, ask how she's doing, or try to reopen the door she casually shut. But the message never comes. The days turn into weeks, and the silence remains. And now it doesn't feel like control anymore. Because if you're not reaching out, what does that really mean? She starts considering possibilities she never had to think about before. Are you waiting for her to make the first move? Are you seeing someone else? Or worse, have you simply moved on? That last thought, that's the one that terrifies her the most. Because if you're no longer affected by her absence, if you're no longer feeling the need to prove your worth or win her back, then that means something deeper has shifted. She's lost control of the situation. Now you hold all the power, and she can feel it. The longer you remain silent, the more that silence turns into something loud, louder than any words ever could be. She's checking your profile now, scanning for updates, trying to find clues about where your mind is. She's paying attention to how you interact with others, looking for signs that she's been replaced. She's feeling something she never wanted to feel, a lack of certainty about where she stands. And for someone who once felt so in control, that feeling is unbearable. This isn't just about missing you. This is about not knowing what's happening on your end. Because the moment she realizes she's no longer the center of your thoughts, That's when the regret really starts to settle in. She told herself she could let go easily, that she wouldn't look back, that this was just another chapter closing. But now she's realizing she wasn't as ready to lose you as she thought. The fear that she's becoming forgettable. At first, she only felt the silence, the lack of messages, the missing reactions, the empty space where your attention used to be. It was uncomfortable, yes, but she convinced herself that it was temporary, that you'd break first. But now something much worse is creeping in. It's no longer just about your absence. It's about the terrifying thought that she's fading from your mind completely. The fear that you might not be struggling with this the way she is. That while she's here analyzing everything, feeling the weight of time passing, replaying old moments in her mind, you might not be thinking about her at all. And that's the kind of realization that shakes her to her core. She expected you to wait, to hesitate before moving on, to still hold on to the idea of her even in her absence. But every day that passes without a response, without a sign that she still holds space in your world, that illusion starts to crumble. Now she starts imagining things she never wanted to think about. What if you're actually happier without her? What if someone else is filling the space she left behind? What if she was never as important to you as she thought? And the most devastating question of all, what if she made a mistake? That's the moment when the cold shoulder effect completely backfires on her. Because what was once her way of controlling the situation, of making you chase, of keeping you emotionally invested, has now turned into the very thing making her spiral. She wanted you to feel the loss, but now she's the one drowning in it. And the more time goes by, the worse it gets. Because now she's battling the fear of irrelevance, not just that she lost you, but that you don't even care that she's gone. And that kind of fear, it's the hardest one to shake, because now it's no longer about what happened between you two. It's about something far more personal. Her ego, her identity, her place in your world. She used to be the one who mattered. Now she's starting to wonder if she was just a temporary moment in your life. And that's a thought she can't live with. That's why sooner or later she has to act. But not from a place of confidence. Not because she truly wants to. She acts out of panic because the idea of being truly forgotten, that's a reality she refuses to accept. The desperation pushes her to make a move. She doesn't want to admit it, but the silence is getting to her. She tried to play it cool. She convinced herself that pulling away was a test, a way to gauge how much you really cared. But this test, it backfired completely. The longer she waits for you to react, the more uneasy she feels. And the uneasiness is turning into full-blown panic. She never thought she'd be the one overthinking. She always expected to be the one in control. But the reality unfolding in front of her is something she never planned for. The possibility that you don't need her anymore. And that possibility? It's terrifying. She checks your online status more often than she'd like to admit. She watches your posts with a different kind of interest now. Not just to see what you're doing, but to see if there's any sign that you still think about her. But the more she looks, the more frustrated she becomes, because not only are you not reaching out, you seem fine. And that's the worst part of all. It's not just that she doesn't have your attention, it's that you're not giving her any indication that she still matters. She expected at least some sign of discomfort from you, a reaction, a subtle hint that you're still emotionally invested. But what she's getting instead? Nothing. That's when the panic truly sets in. Now, she's not just missing you, she's realizing that she might have actually lost you. And that realization is unbearable because losing you was never the plan. She thought she could pull back and still keep the connection alive in the background, that even in the silence you'd still be thinking about her, waiting for the right moment to try again. But instead, you adapted to her absence in a way she never expected. You're not chasing, you're not reaching out, you're not reacting. And now, she's the one drowning in uncertainty. She knows she needs to do something before it's too late, so she starts with something small, a random like on an old post, a vague story update meant to get your attention, a comment designed to be just friendly enough to break the tension. She's not making her move out of confidence, she's making it out of fear, because the thought of being completely forgotten, that's something she refuses to accept. But what she doesn't realize is that it's not up to her anymore, and that shift in power is what's truly making her spiral, the crushing realization that she no longer has control. She thought a simple breadcrumb would be enough, a like on your post, a short message, a subtle attempt to reopen the door without fully stepping through it. But what happens when you don't react the way she expected? She assumed that even after all this time, you'd still feel something, that you'd take any small gesture from her as an invitation to jump back in. But when she reaches out, and you don't immediately take the bait, that's when reality truly sets in. She doesn't have control anymore. This is the moment where the cold shoulder effect fully flips on her. She thought ignoring you would make you chase, that her silence would make you desperate for her validation. But now, it's her feeling the desperation. She's second-guessing everything. Did you move on? Are you actually happier without her? Or worse, do you just not care anymore? That last question, that's the one that shakes her confidence the most. Because deep down, she always assumed she had some level of power over you. That no matter what happened, she could still occupy space in your mind. But now, she's not so sure. And that doubt, it's unbearable. She starts watching you even more closely, hoping for some kind of reassurance. Maybe she sees you smiling in pictures, looking more confident, living your life as if she never existed. Maybe she notices that your energy is different, that you no longer carry the same weight of the past. Maybe she hears through mutual friends that you're doing better than ever, and that's when the regret fully consumes her. Because now, she's no longer just missing you. She's realizing she underestimated you. She thought she was the one making the decisions. She thought she had time. She thought she could always come back if she wanted to. But now she's facing the terrifying reality that she might have lost you for good. And that's when the panic truly sets in. Now, she's not just reaching out to test the waters. She's trying to see if there's any chance left at all. But the moment she realizes that the choice is no longer hers, that's when she truly feels the loss. When she realizes you are no longer an option, her mind is racing. She didn't prepare for this. She didn't think she'd ever have to. She assumed she could walk back into your life whenever she wanted, that no matter how much time passed, some part of you would always be waiting. That if she ever changed her mind, all it would take was a simple message to pull you back in. But this is something completely foreign to her, because now she's seeing something she never expected. You've stopped seeing her as an option. She thought her presence alone was enough to keep the connection alive, that no matter what, you'd always see her differently than you see other women. But now you don't. You're not putting her on a pedestal anymore. You're not treating her like she's special just because she was once in your life. You're not handing her the emotional reassurance she craves. And that's what truly shakes her confidence, because now she has to sit with the realization that you are no longer the man she left behind. She expected you to be the same. She expected you to hold on to the past. She expected you to keep her in a safe place in your mind, always ready to welcome her back. But instead, you changed. Not in the way she hoped, not in a way that makes you more eager for her attention, but in a way that makes her feel completely out of place in your world. She's the one who created the distance. She's the one who assumed she had the upper hand. She's the one who thought she could pull away and still hold on to her influence over you. But now that influence is gone, and this time there's nothing she can do about it. This isn't about games anymore. This isn't about ego. This isn't about waiting for the right moment to reconnect. This is about understanding that she lost something real, and as much as she tries to act like it doesn't bother her, deep inside, she knows she made the wrong choice. The moment she realizes she can't get you back, she'll be exhausted by every option she's tried. She's tested the waters, thrown out subtle signals, and tried to regain the influence she once had over you. But nothing is working. Now, she's left with the one thought she never expected to have. She may never get you back. At first, she convinced herself that your silence was just a tactic, that you were waiting for the right moment to give in. But the longer you hold your ground, the clearer it becomes. This isn't a game for you. You're not ignoring her to make her chase. You're not staying silent because you're trying to manipulate the situation. You're not waiting for her to realize her mistake. You've actually moved on, and that's a reality she wasn't ready to face. For the first time, she's not just dealing with your absence. She's realizing that you are truly gone. She scrolls through your social media, trying to find some sign that you still think about her. She replays old conversations, searching for something she might have missed. She considers messaging you again, but the fear of rejection holds her back. What if you don't care anymore? That's the thought she can't escape. The possibility that you've built a new reality without her in it. She thought she was teaching you a lesson by pulling away, but instead, she's the one who learned something she can never forget. She wasn't the prize. She wasn't the one in control. She wasn't as irreplaceable as she once believed. And now, she's experiencing something she never thought she would. Being on the losing side of her own decisions. You were never meant to be the one who walked away first. You were never supposed to be the one who became indifferent. You were never meant to be the one she had to prove herself to. But now, that's exactly where she finds herself. And the moment she realizes that no amount of effort, no amount of regret, no amount of reaching out can bring back the version of you she once knew, that's when the real pain begins. Because now she knows she can't undo what's been done. And the worst part? You're not even looking back. If this opened your eyes, watch the next video on your screen. Once you understand this, everything changes.